Let's go to the phone line now. United States Senator Roy Blunt, are you wearing green today?
I am not, and I'll just give you the official ruling on this, which is St. Patrick's Day is St. Patrick's Day.
Mm-hmm.
Not Friday, it's not any other day, it's March the 17th, and I'll have some green on that day.
Direct from Washington, D.C., Bradley.
Yeah,
right
there it is.
I don't understand why we can't start celebrating it now, leading all the way up to it. I mean, you know.
Well, I had to keep you from bringing the Guinness in this morning.
You can celebrate it all. It's March the 17th.
That's right. It'll be on Sunday. Good morning, Senator. Thank you for joining us today. I want to start off with something that's really bothered me. The sequestration that came down, I think, has been used as a tool for some people in Washington to wag a stick at some of us out here in the sticks. Now, Roy, are you understanding what I'm saying and feeling my pain?
I am, and you're absolutely right. And, clearly the president, any discussion to reduce spending, the president wants to be as painful as it can possibly be. These budget caps that we set in law in the summer of 2011 are a good thing. They will hold government spending down by $1.2 trillion over 10 years if we stick with them, and I'm for sticking with them. And, you don't have to have sequestration at all if you just appropriate the money below the level that the government says is the maximum that we can spend in the discretionary part of the budget. So there's no reason to have sequestration. And if you are going to have it, there's no reason not to have it in a way that ensures that people who are involved in public safety and health are the last people to get laid off, not the first people to be laid off. And in fact, I've got a piece of legislation that moving forward would do that, and the White House is opposed to it. And the only reason they're opposed to it is they don't want this to work well for people. They want it to be difficult for people because they want to spend more money, and it's just a very different view of what's the problem in the country today.
Well, the Obama administration claiming that it doesn't have the flexibility that it needs to make sure that essential federal employees continue to provide vital services. And so that's why you stepped up this week and put out that proposal to say, well, then look here, let's go ahead and amend this to protect the economy. And I think, Senator Blunt, that makes great sense.
Of course it does. And they complain about it a little bit, but you don't have to get very far under the surface with the Obama team to hear them say, we don't want anything that changes sequestration because we want it to be painful and we want to have the minimum responsibility. It's sort of the opposite of what a strong leader would do to say, look, I'm going to make this work. This leader says, and his administration, I'm going to do everything I can to make it not work. In fact, Tom, in July and again in the very last of September, 2 days before the fiscal year started, the Obama administration, the Office of Management and Budget, sent out a letter to all the agencies that said, spend money starting October 1 as if the law is not going to stay in effect. Don't plan for this. Don't hold back. Don't do anything that anticipates that you're going to have to make these cuts. In fact, spend money like you believe that the law is going to be changed. And, of course, that's the pain that some federal employees and people who work at facilities where the federal inspector has to show up are showing today.
Now, something that I have heard raised in our area, and, being an area of education as we are here in Central Missouri, we have a lot of students that may be receiving some level of tuition assistance from the armed services. And this has been cut immediately. Is this something that does make sense, or is this someone trying to make sure the cuts immediately hurt individuals out here in the country?
Well, I think that most of the students that are on the campus in Columbia, for instance, are not going to anticipate this. The cuts the administration announced, which I'm not for, but they're for the tuition assistance program for people who are in the active military right now. They're not cutting veterans benefits or veterans student benefits. Those benefits are actually protected by the Budget Control Act. But again, Of all the things in the military that you could find to save money, the place you decide to save money is the tuition for some man or woman who's taken an online course. The former university president, I find that particularly offensive, and I think they want America to be offended by not spending money we don't have, and so they're looking for ways to make this needlessly painful. But again, the point for people in Colombia, as an example, who are there going to school on a veterans benefit program, their program isn't being changed. It's the active duty person who's getting a tuition benefit for taking classes while they're actively working in the military, and they're probably on a base somewhere, on an aircraft carrier. They're in all likelihood not in Columbia, Missouri, though there may be a handful of people that are, but it would be a small handful.
U.S. Senator Roy Blunt is with us. Eagle News Time is 7:44. I love the phrase moments ago, not spending the money that we don't have. That's amazing. News Director Brad Trinago.
Yeah, Senator Blunt, you had the opportunity actually yesterday to lunch with President Obama. Were you able to bring up some of these frustrations that you just told us about, and what was his response in the dialogue like?
The president's response to let's solve the problems we agree on is I'm willing to solve the problems we all know we need to solve. Everybody knows that we need to do things that ensure that the biggest spending programs in the government, Social Security and Medicare, are still there a generation from now for people who are paying the bills today. But in every instance, he says, but I have to have more tax revenue before I can be part of any discussion about anything. And that's just not where I am. It's not where Republicans in the House are. It's not where Republicans in the Senate are. And while we're a minority in the Senate, Republicans are a majority in the House, and in the Senate, a minority still has the capacity under the current rules to stop things that would raise taxes further. The president just got his tax increase. He got that top rate back to the 2000 level that he said would solve all sorts of problems. So let's see how many problems it solves. I kept telling, I talked to the president personally in the White House a number of times in November and December. Solve every problem you can solve right now. Why would you want to continue to have your administration defined by going from one crisis to another? And they failed to do that. They got their long demanded top to where it was, and immediately the very next day we're saying we now need more revenue. They got $650 billion. We need to find ways to reform programs and cut spending and get the federal government back where it needs to be.
I think there are a lot of people in the middle, politically, Senator, that just really want people on the right and people on the left to come together and find a way to get done what they can get done, like you mentioned. Do you feel like, stuff like that lunch yesterday and conversations you've had recently with the president and Democrats are getting you closer to a point where you guys can find some compromises?
I don't know that they're getting how much closer they're getting, but I actually think that the moment is getting us closer of looking at the agreement made 18 months ago, the Budget Control Act, beginning to realize that conservatives don't intend to blink regarding this law, which is in place for 10 years. And so that means we really need to debate the spending bills. We need to debate the appropriations bills. Part of the problem here has been that for all the time that Senator Reid's been the majority leader, we've never a single time in the whole 6 years, 2 of which I've been in the Senate, had the appropriations process work like it's supposed to. And when you talk to any military leader in the last month, in public, under oath, they're willing to say, look, the sequestration's a problem, cutting line by line is a problem, but another huge problem, some of them say an even bigger problem, is we're cutting our priorities that were our priorities 4 and 5 years ago. That we need the Congress to pass a bill every year that says this is how we're going to spend money in the military, this is how we're going to spend money in the Department of Education, this is how we're going to spend money in the Department of Transportation, and I think this is forcing us to get back to the regular way of doing business and debating these issues in public, having a budget for the first time in 4 years. All these are good things. I don't know that any of them are dependent on the president trying to have better relationships with the Congress, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the president trying to have better relationships. So when something does happen, maybe that last difference is bridged by just the fact that you've actually taken the effort to begin to know people, which this president has not been nearly as good as his predecessors at doing that.
Eagle News time is 7:49. Senator Blunt is with us. I know time's always of the essence when we get together on the phone. So just let me throw this out there. Yesterday, you and your office put out a press release talking about the budget proposal with the Senate Democrats, their budget. Am I to understand your numbers are correct on this? Their budget would raise taxes by $1.5 trillion, but yet would still add $7.3 trillion in new debt over the next 10 years?
I think that's at least right. In new debt beyond what we have today, and probably more than that. This is one of the reasons that the Democrats haven't wanted to produce a budget for 4 years. The last time the Democrats, the Senate passed a budget or even debated a budget, nobody had an iPad because it hadn't been invented yet. It's been a long. The Sistine Chapel was painted by Michelangelo quicker than the Democrats have produced this budget. You'd think it would be a masterpiece, but instead it's just totally offensive to the idea of responsible planning, I think.
That's a killer comparison. It's really something. Roy, we got to jump. We got to let you go as well. Would you please keep hammering out and working on this? And folks, blunt.senate.gov. Yeah, I just mentioned to you those numbers. There are more numbers there where you see that their budget increases spending by 62% over the next 10 years. It's baffling how they can do this. Please go to Senator Blunt's site and read more details on that. Roy, thanks for being with us, and I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day.
Well, it's great to be with you. You all have a great weekend and a good week next week. I'm looking forward to being home all over the state the week after that, and hope to see you in the studio before too long.
Hope that happens. Thank you.
Thank you.